Today we're going to be working with the pen and wash technique, and this time we'll be drawing and painting a lovely ladybird, or would you call it a ladybug? So let's get those pens out and those brushes wet, and let's get started. The pen I'm using today is one made by Pilot, the Pilot drawing pen, and this is a waterproof pen. In other words, when we add the watercolour over the top, it shouldn't blur, it shouldn't move on that paper. When you're working with a waterproof pen, what you need to do is very lightly touch the paper, like I'm doing here, and go over those pencil marks from your drawing. The pencil we can erase after we've done all the drawing out. Okay. And especially once it's all nice and dry. Very lightly, using the very tip of the pen, go around Ladybird, or Ladybug, I know it depends on where you live. Ladybird here in the UK, just gently touching the paper, that's all I'm doing here. There will be instances where I need to use a very light hand and also the side of the pen. I'll show you that when I get to it, okay? But for now, I just want to very lightly go over the lines for the Ladybird, just initially anyway. And that's towards the wing cases there, isn't it? But I can see that the side of the head, a bit of a gap. So you got a gap there. Then you got a bit of a leg or something there as well. Very difficult to see at this sort of scale, isn't it? So the idea would be just to pen it in first of all, very lightly. And then you can add the details in between. One thing you need to be very careful of when you're working with pens, especially the pen and wash technique, is that you don't want to add too much detail in. You need some detail, of course you do. But if you put too much detail in, when you add the colours over the top, you find that the colours will appear to be far too dark. So err on the side of caution. Don't go overboard with the details, not initially anyway. So sort of situation that once you've got the details on, and you think, well, I'm not sure if that's enough or not, that's when you take a break and stand back. Okay, you want to put the kettle on or something like that. Go make a cup of tea, cup of coffee, anything like that will do. Then come back with those fresh eyes and then decide if you need to add further detail to the paper. Now looking towards the head, very fine, isn't it? Extremely fine. Just ensure that your photograph is a similar size to your drawing. At least then you won't try to draw too much detail. So easy to kind of get carried away. I'll just do these little white areas here. To get carried away with the detail, isn't it? It really is. Very lightly, just touching the paper. And the same on this side here. That's sort of a double line there, we can barely see it. It's too small to see at this scale, really, isn't it? And then working your way around all the black spots we can see on those wing cases, okay? Don't work on the lines where the white is. Leave those be. It's not a bee, it's a ladybird. Now when you get to the joints and the wing cases there, what you need to do is use your pen on its side. So normally, I'd use a pen like this. So sort of that angle there, okay? But if you use your pen on its side, you just graze in the tip like that, see that? Even though it's the same ink, the same colour. Because you're grazing it, you're just getting a small amount of ink off that pen, that's all you need to do. And that can be for areas like here. So I'll just put my pen down a little bit, trying to lower it down so you can see it on camera. And just graze the paper for the joint there, just barely touching it. I'm using the same technique as I work on the flower as well. So by using the side of the pen, all you need to do is very lightly graze the paper. If your pen is too much of an angle, obviously it won't work. But you need to angle it just enough to catch the tip of that pen. But with no pressure, you're using the weight of the pen. That's all you're doing. So take your time and work your way around that flower. What I do want to do, using the side of the pen again, you can hold it between two fingers instead like that. I am left-handed, so you want to obviously do the other way around, of course. So I'm going to graze just on the slightly darker area of the ladybird here, just on the back. So it's not coming off, so I'm going to have to angle that pen up a little bit more, just by walking my fingers down the pen there. Then very lightly graze that paper. Look at the curve you can see there. I get a gradual shadow, gradual shape around the back end of this lovely insect. So a little bit down there, and I'll do the same underneath here as well, but not much. Barely touching the paper, remember. And take your time. There's no rush. And do the same around the head. Looking for those paler areas as well. We can see quite a lot of blue shades in there. So very lightly shade it. And when you get towards roughly just past halfway down, maybe even 2/3, start to form the shape you can see that comes away from the back of the head, all the way around there, then hooks down like a little curve just here. And that's a gradual transition from the lighter area to that really dark area on this side. I can graze that in for now. Again, just using the side of the pen. That's all I'm doing. Nothing different to what we've already done. Then what I'm going to do is cross hatch the area just by bringing my pen slightly higher. If you've never used cross hatching, all it simply is something like this. So you're going to go lines that way, then lines that way. If you want it even darker, you can go the other way, so lines that way. And every time you go over it with lines, it's going to get darker and darker and darker, as you can see here. And you can taper that out as well if you want to, so you can just very lightly draw over the paper again and ease off those lines, just making it a little bit more gappy as well. And this is a good way of creating gradual shade by using the cross-hatching technique. The other technique I'm using in there is by scumbling, which is basically this. So I'll do it larger on purpose, so it's going to be like that. Just let your hand go, to a certain degree. But I'm doing it with a light pen, using my pen nearly on its side again. And just lightly scumbling like that. So I'm going to use both techniques within this area here. So scumble, and a few little marks down there as well on this side, but not many. Remember what I said earlier on, so you want to reserve the white of that paper to a certain degree, so you can have the colours over the top. Now when you're working on the flower, again use the side of the pen, just lightly grazing, and just angle it out a little bit more, and you'll find every pen is different. Everyone's different when you're working on something like this. The best way is test out some scrap watercolour paper first of all, like I've done there. Some offcuts, that's all I tend to keep. And these are offcuts, some old paintings which I decided to throw away. You know, anything that didn't work out. Always save any failed watercolour paintings because they do come in very useful for working as testing strips. Now, when you're looking at every single section here, just very lightly grazing the paper, because it's quite a pale flower really, isn't it? But you find as you look around, there are some darker areas. I need that to remain bright, okay? Then start working around the flower doing the same thing. I don't know. But that's what you need to do. So use the side of the pen, look very carefully back and forth for that reference photograph every few seconds. And as I mentioned earlier on, take your time with it. There's no rush. You should never rush a painting. Not when you're working with detail anyway. Get some basic details on that paper, but still reserve quite a lot of that white paper there, just so the colours stand out. Now here's some facts for you. You ready for this? Yeah. Did you know that ladybirds are actually beetles? That's probably why our relatives across the water call them ladybugs, because they are actually bugs. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier on, not all ladybirds are red and black. No, of course not, but they are very common. But there are many other species with different colours as well, such as yellow, orange, or even brown. And in the case of this red ladybird, they've probably got red wing cases because it's more of a sort of warning to potential predators out there. In other words, I won't be very tasty, so leave me alone, will you? When you're working on the flower, just remember not to go too dark with those lines, because there aren't any really dark areas there, are there? Just bear that in mind. For this I'm going to work with a black and white version of the photograph, because at least then you can see the tonal variations throughout the picture. And you can also see that the flower isn't that dark, is it? So don't add too many dark tones in there. And I'm going to do this by having my pen on the edge of that nib. Now another technique I'm using here is stippling. And all that is really creating tiny, tiny dots like that. The closer together they are, the darker it will appear. And the further apart they are, the lighter it will appear. And if you're using the side of the pen as well, they get even lighter than that, as you can see. Again, just using the weight of the pen, that's all I'm doing there. But that's a good technique as well when you want to create texture, especially around this stem. You'll also find the stippling technique is quite useful around some of the leaves here. So a few little dots here and there around there, and the same on the other side, but don't overdo it. And these are more obvious really towards the tips, aren't they, of these leaves, just around there. Using the side of the pen. And a few odd ones, slightly higher up on the stem as well, but not many. I want to create that sort of a round curved feel there. And also, when you see those fine white lines coming off the flower, stay tuned and I'll show you how to do that later on. And that's not too far away. Another fact about ladybirds is that they can be very welcome in gardens. Why is that then? Well, apparently they do consume quite a lot of aphids and other plant-eating pests out there as well, which in turn will help control the populations. You know, we smell with our nose, don't we? Of course we do. But ladybirds, they tend to smell with their feet and the antenna. Really? I know. Now that's certainly different. Grab yourself an eraser. This is one by Faber-Castell. Okay, and then very carefully erase. Oh, see, I've just missed that bit there. But that's okay, it's quite pale on that area. Erase all that pencil off the paper. Don't rub too hard though. I can see straight away all we've got left is the pen. Very carefully, but as I mentioned, do make sure that your pen is nice and dry first. Just leave it for 5 or 10 minutes before you do this. Just be on the safe side. If you do want to know the colour palettes which I'm using today, it's all available on my Patreon channel for my paid members. But that also includes the outline drawing and that reference photograph as well. And that's alongside many other video tutorials as well. So if you're interested, I'll put the link in the description down below. If that's not for you, just use similar colours to the ones I have here within my mixing palette. Okay, size 2 brush. Going to wet the paper first of all. Not too wet. I want to start off with the flower because that's the lightest area, isn't it? So working on those lovely petals. Dampen the petals with some clean water, but don't completely soak it through though. And allow that water to soak into the paper just a little bit. I'm going to go for the weaker version, the more bluey version of my mix. Add that in first of all, just to here. It's a lovely violet colour normally, isn't it? But I'm going to go with the blue first. Allow it to fade as it goes lower down. Grab some of the lovely purpley violetty colour. We'll add that in there as well, just a touch of that lot. Just changes it slightly, doesn't it? Just takes away a small amount of that blue. And that's one section just about done already. I know, that's so quick, isn't it? A little bit more in there. Look at the photograph and you see it again, we can work with the blue version first of all. But it's not too strong, is it? All these mixes are watery, by the way. Very carefully and lightly drop it onto the paper like that. Grab some of this colour and add that in as well. Just mix it on the paper. I've got the same colour mixed again, but this time more of a 50-50 mix. So I can keep switching back and forth if I need to. And that is just 2 areas already painted in. Very straightforward, isn't it? The rest will be the same technique, working on the petals only. Obviously the leaves will work on separately. When you work around areas like this here, I'm going to dampen it down first of all. Again, I'm not trying to soak it through. I don't want it to run off the paper like a waterfall, I really don't. Be careful around the ladybird's head. I know it's quite dark in there, isn't it? We'll sort that out later on. And just below there, that's purple under there as well, isn't it? Like a violet purpley colour. Make sure that's soaked into the paper so you can see the texture of the paper there. So a small amount of blue, first of all, or bluey violetty colour. And just dampen that off so it's not too rich. Go for your violets. Add a little bit of that in there. Again, I'm trying to be careful not to go too strong. We do know that watercolour very often dries up a little bit paler, which can be quite useful actually, can't it? So sometimes you've got to go a little bit stronger to allow it to dry paler. I know, it can be quite confusing sometimes. Yeah, that'll do. So that's what you've got to do. Work your way around the flower, doing the same thing, looking at the variation of colours as you do so. And go through those colour mixes as you work around the petals. In fact, I can see that this one here isn't quite rich enough. So once that's nice and bone dry, I'll get some more of the colours, whichever one I want to use, and just go over the top of that a little bit more, leaving that gap in between as well, as you can see on that reference photograph. So wet it and very lightly drop the colour in, blending that colour out as you go along. Look on the photograph where it's going to be richer in tone, and then gradually gets lighter in places as well. And by doing this, it will give you more of individual curved shapes for the different parts of this flower. You'll find that some areas might not blend properly, so you can just very lightly twiddle them with a damp clean brush again. I like to do a lot of twiddling like that. Look around and you can see what you can see. Very often you spot areas where you think, oh yeah, a bit more of that colour in there. What I want to do is just add some basic details in there, but not many, because we've already done the detail work, haven't we? By working with that waterproof pen. Okay, now let's give it a quick blast with a hairdryer. From a distance, of course, so you don't burn that paper. Okay, let's start off with the stem. Lightly dampen it down again. Not too much. Just a little bit. Now we've got some yellow dots on there, haven't we? But we'll put those in later. So I'm assuming that's green there, but it's difficult to tell, isn't it? Because that could be the purple colour behind there. I'm not too sure. Hello. Go for the lovely bright yellow first of all, like a greeny yellow. Drop it in. Do the same elsewhere as well. But do note that the higher you go is much paler. And also look at where the light is hitting them as well. For example, we've got the light hitting down the middle of this, haven't we? This is just a background colour. More or less a foundation wash, really. Let's add a bit of brightness behind the scenes before we add the next layer over the top. And the same down here. Grab some of my purple colour in a minute, or bluey purple, probably this one here will do. Just add a touch of that in the background there. So I do think that's part of the flower. But it's difficult to say, isn't it? The way of doing that is simply paint what you can see. Okay, go back to the greens again. I'm going to go for my sort of a richer green there. Add a touch of that in. Just into that damp paper there. The same on this one here, though. Work your way around the edges for now. As you can see, it gets lighter the higher up each section it goes. Then lightly soften that one down. And don't forget we can work in layers. So don't try and go too rich too soon. We can always give it a dry and put another layer over the top. But only when it's bone dry. I'm going to go for my next green. It's more like a sap green colour, isn't it, in a way. Add that in. Just towards the very edges. And then bring it in. That needs to blend as it dries. A few little lines here and there as well. Allow it to blend. Carry on with this side here now. You see this is getting much richer in tone now, isn't it? Starting to. And this is now onto the dry paper. So it's no longer wet. It may just be a little bit damp in places, but that's all. And the same along the stem. Okay, we need to blend that out. I need to have a gradual blend as it works its way over the top. Clean damp brush, then gently blend it. Give it a dry, then you can decide if you want to add some more colour into there or not. I might add a touch more yellow in there, the lighter colour we got there, just to finalise these areas. Now for the ladybird, or ladybug. Dampen it down first of all once again, but avoiding the white areas there though. Two white sections, so just around the side there. Lightly dampen it. Don't soak it through. Small amounts of red, but not much. You want this really pale on this side. Very pale. You'll see why in a minute. So it's more of a pink colour there, isn't it? Okay, I'm just going to cover that over. Yeah, why not? Now let's dry that, and then I'll add a creamier layer over the top. Only in places though. Okay, creamy. Here we go. This is where we can really add that vibrant colour onto that ladybird. Look at the way the colour changes as well. It's not quite as creamy around there. So even though I'm going to mark it out there, I've got to very lightly fill that in places, okay? I don't want to make it too strong in that area there. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Work around the bottom of the ladybird, or ladybug, I know. Then around those black spots as well. And gradually fill it in. But not all the same shade though, is it? No. Now if you do find that your pen work isn't quite enough, once it's nice and dry, then you can go over the top of that with your pen. But let it dry first, just in case, okay? This is a vibrant colour. Red's a really good colour to make people look. It really is. When you look at some of the old masters' paintings out there, they very often use a little bit of red. Say, for example, within a landscape, and they got probably a person walking in the distance with a red coat on. Your eye is very often drawn straight away to that red. As it will be when people look at this painting, they'll go straight to our ladybird and work from that. I'm using a damp clean brush at the moment to lift off a small amount of paint, and that will help create additional details within those wing cases. A little bit more down there, give it a dry on some kitchen roll, and another little mark there as well. Just vary it slightly in places. Once this is dry, then you can decide if you want to have another layer over the top. But let it dry first of all though. Or of course give it a blast with a hairdryer. You know that anyway. Now that's just about drying there now. I'm going to go for some blue. A very light colour there. Just a little bit of that. Not much. I'm going to add this onto the head now. Small amounts of blue. Try and see how it's lighter in there as well. I'll just lighten it down just a fraction. Just slightly paler. Oh, that was rich. Looking all strict again then, wasn't I? I know. Touch more blue in there. Just to blue it gradually. Bit of a highlight around this area here, but not much. Then for your black, start with this side first of all. Be careful around where the legs are on the left and right hand side of this. Just by touching them slightly. This sort of curves around there, doesn't it? It comes around to there, then back down again. That sort of shape. A little bit in there. I'm going to blend that in a minute. Just a touch more maybe. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, we've already done the detail work, I know. Spent all that time doing that. So we don't need to do too much of that at this stage. But there will be occasions when you think, oh, I could just add a little bit more detail in there. I want that to gradually blend a little bit. Then work around the head, doing the same thing. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go for the black first of all. Just a touch there. A touch here. And a tiny amount about there. That is minuscule, isn't it? Very tiny indeed. Probably a touch more in there actually. When you get the darker tones on, that's when you start to see if the lightest tones are either too light or not light enough. And I can see straight away that my lighter tones are a little bit too light, a little bit too pale, just in places anyway. And before it dries, if it's too much, you can lift a small amount of paint off. And then the same for the head. You can barely see this now. Okay, that's nearly dry now. I'm going to go over the top of that with my pen. This is a size 2 by the way now. Just to darken where it's needed. Around there. It's nearly dry, not quite. That's paler, that one anyway, so I'm not going to go over that one. then the other spots as well. Just give it a tweak and fine tune it, that's all you got to do. I'm going to get a white gel pen. This is a Uniball Signo Broad. Okay, here we go. Now let's go to the sepal. And this is what you can use to add those final lines, like these here, look. You can barely see them, but they are there. They stand out more so for those darker, richer areas, like around there, look. Work your way around, just adding a few in here and there. You can barely see them, but we know they are there. Now this will dry fairly permanent, so be careful with it. Once it's on the paper and it's dry, there's very little chance you'll actually get that off. When you're working on the stem, I'm going to say about this, what you can do is tap. Tiny little taps using this pen to create that texture. Let it dry, then go over the top of that with our sort of yellowy green colour. The same on the section here as well. Tiny little taps. I can even add a few little highlights along the top as well if you wanted to. Okay, grab your yellowy green colour, just tap that over the top. Again, make sure it's dry first. Well, I think that will do for this one, you know. Now if you fancy having a go at another pen and wash painting, have a look to the link to the top right hand corner of the screen. I'll see you there.